Hello, this is more information regarding medical terminology review and anatomy and physiology concepts. Again, this is for billing and coding purposes. This is for anatomy and physiology review. This is for the clinical review, documentation. Everything in the healthcare field depends on proper utilization of medical terminology and anatomy and physiology. And one of the topics that I want to elaborate on would be the urinary system. Now, the urinary system is going to consist of two bean-shaped kidneys. And those bean-shaped kidneys are going to be along the back in the lumbar region, so they're up against the back of the structure. And they are protected to some extent by rib pairs 11 and 12, the floating ribs, so they do have some protection. And the descending aorta is going to feed each one of the kidneys with a branch called the renal artery. So this would be a branch off of the descending aorta, the right renal artery. This would be the left renal artery. And they also are going to have a venous supply, the renal vein, which ultimately converges, and I'm trying to just superimpose that, into the inferior vena cava. So blood that gets filtered by the kidneys after it enters from the renal artery will ultimately be returned to the circulatory system by the renal veins feeding into the inferior vena cava. And of course, the inferior vena cava is going to attach to the right atrium. And so now blood, which has had all of the impurities taken out, like creatinine, uric acid, all of those now gets returned, all that clean blood now gets returned to the circulatory system, and ultimately that clean blood gets recirculated throughout the body. Now, leaving the kidneys after the blood has been filtered, we have the two ureters. Ureters lead to the muscular bag known as the renal bladder or the bladder, and then the tube that leaves the bladder is the urethra. Now, the kidneys are going to be made up of millions upon millions of microscopic filtering units called nephrons. And those nephrons are going to filter the blood, return clean blood back to the circulatory system, but they're also going to be important in maintaining fluid and acid-base balance in our body by making up the composition of the urine that we have, making sure that pH is maintained, making sure that sodium and potassium and other electrolyte balance is maintained, also maintaining fluid balance. In our body, if we had a high blood pressure reading, the first medication a physician would utilize to treat a patient with high blood pressure would be a diuretic to make them get rid of more body water. That would in turn decrease overall fluid volume, and that would decrease blood volume as well. But when those nephrons filter the blood and return clean blood to the circulation, any excess water or electrolytes or any other waste, they will ultimately get taken by these ureters to the bladder, and it will be stored in the bladder until it's a productive time to get rid of that fluid. When a person goes to the restroom, they may release the urine because it's an appropriate time. There are various terms associated with that: voiding, micturition, urinate, In the healthcare field, you may hear all of those terms used on a regular basis. Now, the kidneys are going to be important in helping us maintain homeostasis. Again, homeostasis in terms of blood volume levels, homeostasis in terms of composition of the blood, homeostasis in terms of blood pressure, getting rid of, uric acid, urea, creatinine, all of those waste products of protein metabolism. So again, the kidneys play a key role in helping us to maintain our homeostatic balance. Now, the kidneys are going to be important in maintaining our balance of water. Another organ system of the body that helps us to also maintain water levels to some extent, that would be the integumentary system. Of course, the integumentary system consists of the epidermis, the outer layer of the skin, the dermis layer, which contains all the blood vessels, it contains the nerve endings, the hair follicles, and then below that we have the adipose layer where we store extra nutrients. It serves as a shock absorber to protect us from trauma, it keeps us warm, and so ultimately it plays a key role in maintaining the integrity of the entire human body. And so the integument plays a key role, and the integument is constantly on guard protecting us from physical issues like abrasions or cuts. Those 20 to 40 cell layers thick of dead skin cells that are filled with the tough protein keratin help protect us, but it's also constantly on call against various types of pathogens. Those pathogens could be fungal infections. Okay, a fungal infection could be like a tinea infection, like tinea cruris, which would be jock itch, or tinea pedis, which would be athlete's foot. It could be some sort of a bacterial infection like impetigo. It could be boils or furuncles, which again are a bacterial infection where the hair follicle is involved. It could be something due to sun damage like actinic keratosis. It could be something in the mouth such as oral leukoplakia or something along those lines. Okay, the entrance from the outer part of the body to the inner part of the body. But again, our skin is also going to serve as a barrier for protection. It helps us maintain our core temperature at an optimal level, and along with the kidneys, it does offer some benefit in terms of regulating body water. If it's a hot day and we sweat more, that helps to cool our body, but also excess of water can get shed through our body through the integumentary system, and that too helps maintain electrolyte levels and body water levels. Now, we talked a little bit about the kidneys' main role, and they're going to be the #1 system in terms of maintaining body water and electrolyte balance. And to some extent, our integumentary does too. Its main job is protection, but it also serves as a sense organ. It also is important in maintaining body temperature. But again, with the loss of water through sweat and the loss of electrolytes, if we have electrolytes in abundance, also through sweating mechanism, can also be attributed to the integumentary system. But the main system, again, that is going to be involved in regulating body water and electrolyte balance and blood volume and the purity of the blood, of course, is going to be the kidneys. And the kidneys are intimately involved with the male and female reproductive structures. And so sometimes this system is even called the genitourinary system. Okay, genitourinary. And so that tells you how intimately involved these structures are. Of course, in the male, the penis is going to be used to not only have intercourse with the female, it must become erect and serve as a tool to deliver sperm into the female reproductive tract. So ultimately a sperm can unite with an ovum and create a fertilized zygote so we can continue to exist as a population. But in the male, the penis is also going to have a dual role for the urethra in that it is going to deliver urine from the urinary bladder out of the body. And so ultimately, we see that there is a lot of carryover between the female genitalia, male genitalia, and the kidneys. And so because of their close proximity, not only just where they're located, but in their functions, you know, it's important that we understand this term, genitourinary. And it's a term that, like I said, oftentimes you will see these two systems grouped together in some textbooks. You may see this grouped together with other areas of the healthcare field as well. Overall, the main things that I want you to take from this brief lecture include the role of the kidneys, made up of millions of nephrons. The nephrons serve as the filtering units. Blood comes from the descending aorta through the right and left renal arteries into each kidney. That blood is under a high amount of pressure, and each kidney receives about 25% of the total cardiac output at any one given time. And that blood gets filtered and returned by the renal veins to the inferior vena cava. Ultimately, that clean blood gets returned to the circulatory system from the inferior vena cava, attaching to the right atrium. Anything that doesn't need to remain in the body, waste materials, excessive water, electrolytes that we have in abundance, would leave the kidneys through the ureters, be stored in the muscular bladder, and then ultimately the contents of the bladder would be released to the outside world when it was convenient, when the urethral sphincters relax due to a response called the micturition reflex, and that gives our body the ability to get rid of the urine. Okay? We may hear getting rid of the urine called voiding. It may also be called micturition. You may hear the term urinate or urination. All of those are means by which we get rid of the urine that's in our body. We said that because of the intimate connection between the male and female reproductive structures and the urinary system, that oftentimes it's called the genitourinary system. Okay? And so be familiar with that term. And we also said that there is actually a link between the kidneys and the integumentary system, because the integumentary system not only serves as a protective armor for the body, but it too, due to the sweating mechanism and the potential to release excessive amounts of water and excessive amounts of electrolytes, if we have those in abundance, it too helps to regulate total body water content and total body electrolyte content. So this is a little bit of a summary of the multiple systems and terminology associated with the urinary system, the term genitourinary, and the integumentary system.